passivity and acceptance of the communistic regime because it is such a wonderful experience, or because of fear of extermination? During the democratic uprising in China, there were placards of Mao Zedong being carried by the crowds. The masses believed then that current leaders had lost the vision of the founder of the Communist Party. Yet, when the protesters were faced with barrels of tanks and the communist leaders subdued the movement and threw the protesters in jail, Mao Zedong's words, "The power of the people come through the barrel of the gun," were followed to the letter by the government. Even though the demonstrators were holding Mao as their example of uncorrupted leadership, the officials of the government were holding true to Mao's doctrine and methods of control of the people. Not all cults are of a religious origin. Some are political, others psychological, some even are social or even emotional. We could also look into the issues of abusive situations and see the same dynamics in them as the groups that number in the thousands. You could find some type of cult for virtually any area of life or interest. Religious cults incite strong reactions because of the abuse they get away with in the name of what they believe, claiming it is protected by the First Amendment. This describes the name of the present chapter. Using deception and mind control techniques, the cults have managed to create sub-societies in a democracy. It is more difficult in a democracy to maintain a totalitarian group because of the ability of information and the availability of information and alternative viewpoints. Cult leaders must work much harder to isolate their members from subversive information. In China, isolation is much easier to achieve because of the government's control of the media and education, coupled with the threat of physical harm or death if there is a dissent from the government. China is only one example. You can find the same atmosphere in places like Cuba, Iran, North Korea, plus the terrorist organizations that are supported by these different countries. Extremism runs rampant, spilling over to affect the rest of the world. The destruction of the World Trade Center, the bombing of the USS Cole, the suicide of sci-fi groups in California, the bombing of the Federal Building in Oklahoma City, the murder of the ATF agents, and the resulting fiery inferno that consumed the lives of Waco, the mass murder-suicide over 900 people in the jungle of Guyana, and even more recently, the spat of terrorist outbreaks, whether it's religious, whether it's political, within the countries of the Middle East, or even spilling over into Europe and Africa. This needs to be remembered. All have the same in common. The leader and the members were perpetrators of the destruction and the carnage of people's lives. Consumed by the belief that they were right. They had the answers to salvation of humankind. They have the answers to salvation of humankind. And anyone or anything that stands in the way of evil and must be destroyed by any means possible. We are too quick to forget the atrocities that happened during the reign of Stalin, Hitler, the ethnic cleansing that takes place in order to have a pure ideological society or a pure race. And not only did it happen then, it still happens. Whether it be cultural, ethnic groups fighting against each other because of purported wrongs, and maybe even really true ones. The effects are still being felt today in the forms of fascist groups, communist groups, dictatorships, countries still gripped in totalitarian societies such as communism. This is also true for the countries that support terrorist groups. They use or allow the same manipulations and fear tactics to gain converts and hold hostage their citizens. Cults in the United States, although they are afforded the protection by our Constitution, would be the first to abolish that same Constitution if they ever came into power. They believe they have the ultimate way of ordering human existence, and therefore all forms of existence are inherently evil and false. Supposedly for the protection of the elect, which are the members of the group must destroy any alternative existence. There can be no reality outside their own. Theirs is the black and white mentality, where there is no room for gray. If power came into their hands, they would be able to silence their critics and have the power to keep them subdued by any means possible. They arrogantly proclaim that they have the truth and that they are the agents chosen to carry and protect that truth, no matter whom or what is destroyed in the process. And I would be remiss if I did not make this point. Cults are not made up by faceless masses. They're made up of human beings. These people have families, relatives, and friends. To label a group a cult is to attempt to label it something less than human. As I wrote before, using the label cult is a derogatory term. Yet for the sake of expediency, I use the term, not forgetting their humanness, for I was once one of them. As we watched the burning of Koresh's compound in Waco, Texas, did we think of the hundreds of others, the families, the friends of those who died in the inferno? Not only the cult members, but those government people that were killed as well. They suffer in silence to this day, trying to make sense of the senseless searching for answers that may never be fully explained. To bring this part to a close, I would like to add a few more thoughts concerning the issues of mind control and deception. There are those who would deny the possibility of their existence. I'd like to give a grim reminder that those that hijacked the planes on 9/11 lived and worked in this country for a number of months before they carried out this travesty. They lived in communities and communicated with people. They had daily contact with others outside their group and thinking. Yet when it came time, they were able to sacrifice themselves and thousands of others for their truth. It would take another book to look fully into the elements of the control and manipulation. This subject is too extensive to be handled here. If I made the person think mind control is at least plausible, I feel I've been successful. I'd also like to make this point. As you can imagine, many people read this book before it went to print. One of the comments made I need to address. There was a feeling that because I was searching for God, this somehow made me vulnerable to get caught up in such a thing, and for that reason it was my own fault. To that I would say yes and no. The yes part is having closed myself off from others' opinions and thoughts that may have contradicted what the group, The Way International, was telling me was the truth. I could not entertain that there was something inherently wrong with the Way's teachings. I would not listen to the thoughts and opinions of others. Truth will stand the test of time and is willing to be challenged in a free marketplace of ideas. The no part is everyone has fallen prey to some type of manipulation. All that it takes is for a person's interest to be captured. which covers many more areas than just religion. As I've stated before, any group could turn into a cult, whether it's a personality cult, a political cult, a psychological cult, or an ideological cult. As we are in the infancy of a new millennium, I quote again those words that were on the sign above the throne of Jim Jones. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Let us be eternally vigilant so that we may prevent situations such as the World Trade Center, the terrorist act of today's, Mount Carmel, Waco, and the People's Temple from ever happening again. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, they are happening in this day and time all over the world. It's more like guerrilla terrorism because it's not like you have a group of people going into one. It's a matter of one or two. Here, there. All it takes is a bomb to blow people up, and many they do blow up. The other thing that I'd like to say before I go any further is that I fault the Western mindset for allowing the Middle Eastern mindset, the terrorist mindset, to get away with it. We like to think that everybody plays nice in the Western mindset. We like to think they play fair, they play by the rules, they play by the rules and the laws drawn up in the Geneva Convention. We like to say that we would like to say that and think that all people agree with that, and that all people are going to be subject to the laws of the world. It is what I can't even think of a word. It is simple-minded and wrong to think that people follow that for when their own end is world domination. They may pretend to people that they're doing that, yet behind their closed borders there's a travesty of inhumanity happening while they're searching for peace and looking for acceptance within the world. Oftentimes it's said that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem is with the United States and the government is that we will hand our money and our guns over to people who will turn around and shoot us with them. We do not understand that mindset. We do not understand the mindset of terrorists. We don't understand the mindset that if I kill people that believe in me, believe the way I do, in the process, that's acceptable because we're all going to go to heaven anyway, or their version of heaven, whatever that may be. So they feel no compunctions about doing whatever they can, however they can, whenever they can, to further their cause, even if they die in the process, because then they become martyrs, which will live on in infamy. One other point, and this is something I'd like the people to consider seriously, and also anybody else that may be listening to that can do something about it. The worst thing that a person can do, or a country can do, is take one of these leaders and publicly execute them. All that does is rally the masses. It does not instill a sense of fear. That's not how the terrorist mindset works. It instills a sense of pride. It still instills a sense of that man, that woman was able to stand up for what they believed in and got killed in the process